Blessings and good evening. Tonight being Tuesday, we have a Q&A session. So there's been a few questions coming in today. The first one is, if possible, I would like to ask this question for today's question and answer session. Lumpur. In regard to a time when the Lord Buddha gave instructions to Venerable Rahula at Mango Stone. In a sutta it stated, Rahula, you should train yourself thus, I think it should say, thus, I will not tell a deliberate lie even in jest. According to this phrase, it implies that one should not tell a lie even as a joke. However, for example, if I stated, if I really wanted to, I could eat 100 pizzas today, as a joke, would this be considered breaking the fourth precept? Well, you have to consider for yourself in these situations, what's your intention, what's going on in your mind, what's happening in that situation. It's interesting, isn't it? The first thing the Buddha taught his son, Rahula, was not to tell a deliberate lie, even in jest. The very first thing he taught him after his enlightenment. Which perhaps puts an emphasis on the quality of honesty, the love of truth, which runs through all the Buddhist teachings and practice. What did the Buddha realize on the night of his enlightenment? He realized the Four Noble Truths. Every day we bow to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. The Four Noble Truths make the Buddha. The Dhamma is the truth. The Sangha also realized the Four Noble Truths. So this emphasis on truth and penetrating, understanding truth is the point of the Buddhist teachings, and it's what liberates the mind from delusion and ignorance. So I guess, particularly for a young person, it is important to emphasize getting a good start in life, establishing this quality of the love of truth and seeing the power and the benefit of honesty and clarity. Because not only are we sometimes tempted to lie to others, even in jest, we sometimes lie to ourselves, and there's no way for the mind to realize the truth and to abandon delusion and ignorance if we're still lying to ourselves. And the nature of delusion is it's deluding, so we have wrong views, we attach to wrong views, false beliefs, wrong beliefs, thoughts that are actually causing us stress and suffering because we haven't yet seen the truth. On and on it goes. It's a big part of the cause of our suffering. Probably for a kid, the most obvious one is, well, don't tell lies because it gets you in trouble with other people. People criticize you, look down on you. So on the level of ethics, morality, you learn to not tell lies, to remove that intention from your speech. So they say, well, if you think telling the truth is going to get you in trouble or cause some problem, well, you can always stay silent, but avoid telling a falseness, a lie, a deliberate lie. Also, in jest, the Buddha wasn't against jokes or humor. I mean, you can see a vein of humor in some of his reflections and teachings to do with the monks' discipline and just pointing out humorous things that happen in life. He certainly wasn't unaware of humor, and he could smile. But then, humor has that danger that it can take over the mind and become another distraction or cause for delusion. One of the kinds of wrong speech is what we call sampapalapa, which is translated as idle, frivolous chatter, meaningless chatter. And the Buddha encouraged people to develop mindfulness, clear comprehension when they speak, so they know what they're saying and why, and to speak in ways that are meaningful, choose words that are meaningful, beneficial for the listener, not to promote delusion, confusion in the mind of the listener. So that's one of the dangers with telling jokes and things. So you might tell a joke thinking, oh, I'm just telling a joke for humorous purposes, to entertain or lighten the mood. So there may be that intention, but then you have to look at the means and the ways as well. And if you're telling a lie, even in a joke, well, it could be sowing confusion. Or trouble with telling lies or falsehoods is that, one thing leads to another, and you might, if you get to be a habit, you're just straying from the truth very easily to the point where people don't know whether you're telling the truth or not, whether you yourself might start to believe some of the things you're saying to be true, and people do this sometimes. They create sometimes memories and things that have happened that never happened, and they start believing it. Memory can trick us easily. So the Buddha encouraged clarity, and particularly with speech. When we lie and we're found out, people lose respect for us. They don't give value to our words once they know we tell lies, even in a joke. They know you're capable of lying. And also, you yourself might lose some of your own self-respect and not feel so good about yourself. And the Buddha also went on to tell Rahula, if you can lie, then you can cover up any evil doing, big or small. And once you've lied once, then it's easier to lie again. So in training yourself, not just in ethical conduct, but just in understanding the mind, the way we attach to views, sense of self, pride, conceit. Telling lies, it hides the truth. And for one who loves the truth and wants to realize the truth, well, that could be an obstacle. It's hard to change bad habits of unskillful action, unskillful speech, if you're hiding it with lying. So it's a good habit to get in from when you're very young, just to know that what is the truth, to tell the truth, or maybe just to keep quiet if you think it's going to be painful to tell the truth. But as you get experience in life, you also see that sometimes it's better to face the pain of telling the truth, owning up, revealing the truth in a situation, even if it seems painful. Because in the long term, you've spoken the truth, so there's not a lot more can happen after that. There may be some consequences, depending on what you're talking about. But if you lie, go the other way, then what happens? You often have to tell another lie to hide the first lie, and then another lie to hide the second lie, and you get tangled in a web of lies, and it can unravel sometimes and causes you problems, other people's problems, causes confusion, makes life difficult. So better to avoid telling lies, even in a joke, but it doesn't mean to say you can't consider your speech, how to speak skillfully, be aware of time and place, choose your words, choose whether to speak or stay silent. You have choice there. Another question. The person has written, they're supposed to write Dear Ajahn, but they wrote Dead Ajahn. So I'm dead. I'll take that as a mistake, a misspelling. I have two questions. One, how to deal with being very competitive. I think that's a modern kind of trait, very modern trait, or it's exaggerated in modern society, particularly because of the way we educate kids and the way we apply for jobs and compete in the workplace, and our whole society is based around competition and accentuates that. So you go to school, there's a lot of competition to be top of the class, get your exams in, get your good results, and you have competition with partners to find the partner, get the partner, keep the partner. So that leads to competition in the sense of who we are, the way we dress, what we know. We compete with our knowledge level, what we know about the world. So we have academic competition, and then we have job competition. You have to compete with many people when you apply for a job in most situations. So our society is actually set up to promote competition in so many areas. Maybe you're just the first one to get to the supermarket and get the toilet paper off the shelf in the middle of lockdown, and you have to compete with others. It's not to say competition is always wrong or bad, but as you start observing society, observing yourself, you can see there is a side that leads to a lot of stress and suffering. So in the corporate sector, so often you hear people complaining how at work they're treated more like a kind of a robot, just somebody who produces a product or a service. They work this amount of hours, produce this amount of product in one way or another, get this amount of money, and they're constantly being measured against other workers, and sometimes people are given the sack because they're not productive enough, and so on. And it can be quite demoralizing, depressing, because you're reduced to just sort of how many hours you work, what you produce in the course of a week, how well you do for the company. And that's all over the world. And human beings, we're a bit more than that, aren't we? We're not simply units of production, although that may be part of our life, but it's not the whole story. But society, and particularly the corporate sector and business and trade, kind of pushes us in that direction all the time. The whole point of the Buddhist teachings is saying as humans we have this potential to develop many sides of ourselves towards the realization of the end of suffering. So one set of qualities you can develop to deal with the competitive nature in society, whether it's manifesting in yourself, you've observed it in yourself, or in others, is what we call the Brahma Viharas, the sublime abidings. That's metta, goodwill for others, oneself and others; karuna, compassion for oneself and others; mudita, which is translated as sympathetic joy, so appreciating the good in oneself and others and wishing for that good to continue; and then equanimity, upekkha, based on an understanding of karma, that we all have made karma and are receiving the fruits of our karma. So these four qualities are meditations and also attitudes, skillful attitudes that we develop in our daily life. And they are directly, or they're certainly modifying competitive behavior, so that, even though you may be better at something than someone else, you may achieve more than somebody at something, you don't forget others. You can put yourself in their place, in their shoes. So have compassion for those who are lagging behind or struggling. You can practice sympathetic joy, meaning sharing in the joy and success of those who are successful. It's the direct opposite of the kind of jealousy and competitiveness that comes in society when you see someone who's better looking than you, or wealthier than you, or smarter than you. You can practice mudita rather than just being jealous or angry or stabbing them in the back. You can develop mudita and just enjoy their success and share in that. So these are very skillful attitudes to develop in daily life, in society, living with other people, and they do help to deal with competitiveness. And you can see from the Buddha's teachings in suttas and so on, he emphasized learning to compete with yourself more than others. You know, compete with yourself in the sense of developing the good side of yourself, the positive potential as a human being. So it'd say things like, you know, the greatest victory is abandoning your anger. You know, rather than beating someone else because you're angry with them and you compete and beat with them in one way or another, whether it's verbally or physically or any other way, you know, competing with yourself to abandon your own anger and doing that successfully is the greatest victory. So it's always encouraging people to develop themselves, better themselves. So in a way you could say compete with themselves, but not in a foolish way that might lead you to feel self-loathing, self-hatred when you see all your faults and mistakes and you don't feel adequate and feel hopeless or whatever. It's more just to see we have this opportunity to develop ourselves as human beings. So to compete with the more negative qualities that we sometimes hold on to, say our laziness or our selfishness or our different forms of attachment, our anger, you know, the worst qualities of the mind, compete with them to see them and let them go. So it's another way of looking at competition rather than always competing with other people. And with other people, when you're practicing Brahma Viharas, to see the happiness that comes when you support other people, you share in their success, you sympathize with their failures and limitations, and we help each other in this way, rather than just seeing everyone as competition, you know, in a very kind of self-centered way, because that doesn't bring us much happiness in the long run. So using the Brahma Viharas is a good way to deal with people. And you know, if you see someone very competitive, you know, maybe at work or in your family circle, friends, well, maybe look at it more deeply. You know, the deepest level, there's no self, is there? There's no one to be competitive or be better than others or worse than others. You know, the whole sense of self is an illusion that we mistakenly cling to in our life, build up, and therefore suffer, and that's often underlying the competition between people. You know, but when you practice meditation, say you practice mindfulness of breathing, as we just chanted in that sutta, when your mind merges with the breath, all the sense of self disappears temporarily, and you set aside the past, so memories and thoughts about the past, set aside your thoughts and concerns about the future during your meditation. As your mind becomes one-pointed with the breath, you become very peaceful because you let go of your normal superficial attachment to the sense of self. So, you know, when your mind is with the breath, fully mindful from moment to moment, you experience great joy because you put down the burden of self. You know, the sense of being man, woman, young, old, rich, poor, this or that, better or worse, disappears, at least temporarily. And that's a great rest for the mind, and it's a great bliss for the mind to do that, even if only for a few moments. And that gives you a new look back at what is self, and then partly, you know, that sense of comparing and competing with others. Also, you see, you know, it's a creation of the mind, and it's cause of suffering. You attach to that conceit and self-view, you suffer. Better than, worse than, same as, and leads to a lot of competition, disagreement, dispute, fighting, and so on. So much suffering. But when it's gone, in your mind, at that moment your mind is very peaceful, you get a lot of bliss. And that clarity also forms the basis for developing insight, seeing the very thought of self, I, me, mine. That attachment is impermanent. It doesn't bring us lasting happiness, and it's not true. It's not a self. It's just a thought construction. So we let go of the sense of self on many levels, and that helps to deal with that competitiveness. As far as other people, if they don't see it yet, well, sometimes you just have to be very patient with them, tolerate them, put up with them sometimes. But then if you find inner happiness, it doesn't matter so much. You tend to feel more sorry for someone who has a strong ego and is competing with others, because you know they're actually causing themselves suffering. They might not see it, might not admit it, but if you've developed some understanding of the mind, you'll see they're heading towards more suffering, the more attachment they have. And how often do you see people in society, they've been very competitive, and maybe on certain levels they're very successful, but often it hollows out some of these other qualities, the compassion, the empathy, and some of the skillful qualities disappear with that competitiveness. So then they often also are prey to depression, anger, and discontent in many different ways. So it's something to contemplate and be aware of. Obviously, this day and age, a lot of competition. Second question. When practicing insight meditation, it is quite obvious when anger and aversion arises, but how does one identify craving? Well, in the Buddha's teachings, craving, Dhamma, he described the three main types of craving. So one is Kama Dhamma, it's like craving for sensuality, for the objects of the senses, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, and that whole realm of particularly pleasure-seeking and desire for the senses, using the senses, coarse, refined, and so on. Sensual craving. And then there's craving to become, for becoming. So literally, to become someone. So all the kind of ambitions, aspirations, and the things we want to be, the sort of state we want to be in, could be more temporary, or could be just life itself. I want to be alive, that's the first thing. Everyone wants to be alive, and then the kind of life you want is the craving to become, so become successful. Could be associated with career, or a certain idea about how you think your life should be and what you want to achieve, where you want to be, who you want to be. And that can vary greatly, because people have many different ideals and aspirations, and it will determine our behavior, which may be moving towards those goals. But it also conditions the third kind of craving not to become. If you attach to an ideal how you think things should be, how you want to be, how you want your life to be, how you want this situation, this experience to be, then when it's not meeting that desire, then you go to the desire to not to become. I don't want this, I want something else. And that's happening all the time, isn't it? I want to be happy, but I'm not. I want to be rich, but I'm not. I want to be better looking, but I'm not. I want this job, but I can't get it. I want to be well known, but I'm not. I want this, I want that. When you don't get what you want, you suffer, and you go to Vipawaddanha, craving not to become, which is also craving to get rid of. You want to get rid of that which doesn't fit with your ideal of your life and how the world should be, how your world should be, how you should be feeling, how you should be at this time. I should be, I've been meditating for many years, so I should be further along the path than I am. It's a common one, even for meditators and Buddhists. They have been meditating for 20, 30 years. I should have mastery of the jhanas, but I don't. So you get upset with yourself, angry, whatever. It can be very refined, craving to become, craving not to become, and it can be very coarse. It can be very immediate, like you're facing some life-threatening situation and it's just, I want to live, I don't want to die, so you run or you do whatever you have to do to stay alive. I don't want this situation that something is threatening my life, a disease or a person or some kind of danger. So it can be that very kind of immediate craving for life, craving to stay alive, or it can be more subtle, more refined, just craving to be a certain kind of person or achieve certain kinds of happiness. So that could be associated with meditation as well. So when people come to monasteries and meditate or offer dana and practice generosity, often they have a craving with it that they haven't seen or they haven't really fully realized, and they, I'm doing this to be a good person, I want to be a good person, I want a heavenly rebirth. It's craving to become. So, sometimes when we look back at our life, we think, oh, I've done so many bad things, I'm not a good person. So I'm craving not to become. I don't want to be a bad person, I don't want all these memories. So it can come up in so many ways, but we have these three kinds of craving. So anger and aversion, they're often conditioned by desire for something and not getting it. Whether it's just, I want a certain kind of food, I want my drink, I want my peace and quiet, I want this, I want that, and then you don't get it, so you get angry. So often you get, particularly when you practice mindfulness and contemplate things more often, contemplate your mind and contemplate how anger arises, you start to see patterns and habits, and you can almost predict where you might get angry because you've seen it before. So, I don't want any problems in my day, in my life. If that's a way of thinking you have, then there'll be certain situations that bring problems that will prompt anger, an angry reaction, irritation. Could be just, you want to be able to sit meditation, peace and quiet, but then there'll always be someone who makes a noise, or someone who asks you to come and do something when you want to meditate, or there'll be a mosquito buzzing around to bite you when you just want to be peaceful. So the more you want things, the more likely you'll get angry and irritated. You'll see that. But some of the underlying causes and conditions for that anger is the wanting, and that's where you have to look. The anger and the aversion is also to be dealt with, but that's like coming up because you're not getting what you want. So we have to look at the whole picture when dealing with anger and aversion. And when you're following desires, you have to warn yourself, don't you? You have to say, if I don't get what I want, I might get upset. That's one of the drawbacks and disadvantages of desiring things, wanting to become. As long as you haven't got it, you're dissatisfied. So if it's something quite good, well, you may just be dissatisfied a little bit, and that you may be able to live with that. But if it's something very sensual or very kind of coarse, then your anger may manifest in a very coarse way. And you see it every day, don't you? People road rage when people are not getting the place they want to get fast enough, or when people don't get what they want at work, or they don't get in their social circle when people aren't treating them the way they want, they get upset. People expect just on the cusp of getting that money in, and then it doesn't happen, something goes wrong, the deal is broken. So you get angry. So if you look at it, you're seeing, this desire has led to this anger, and you start to see the whole picture, the whole pattern of how desire also leads on to anger when frustration sets in. Or maybe you get what you want and then it's destroyed, or it doesn't last, and so you're back to square one and you get angry again because you were hoping that this thing you were going to get solves all your problems, but it doesn't, because it's impermanent. So this is why Ajahn Chah used to say, watch your mind, it's impermanent, it's not sure. So you get what you want, good, but maybe tomorrow you don't get what you want. Or you get what you want, but it doesn't last, and you may be back with not getting what you want. It's not sure, so don't invest all that sense of self and attachment in every thought, in every desire, in every mood. Otherwise you find you're getting irritated, frustrated, impatient very easily. So somebody who understands the uncertainty of the mind, the changing nature of conditions, changing nature of our own thoughts and feelings, they don't get so angry, they don't get so upset, because they know it's uncertain. It's not sure. Today they say nice things about me. Oh, that's good, but it's not sure. Tomorrow they're back criticizing me, giving me a hard time. It's not sure. Today I feel great, but it's not sure. Tomorrow maybe I get a cold and I've got an alert that it says I may have COVID or something. It's not sure. You can't predict always, so you have to be ready for the changes of life. And don't attach too tightly, then you don't suffer, you don't get so angry or upset when things don't go your way. As Ajahn Chah used to say, when someone got sick, he'd say, I was expecting that. We get sick as human beings, so if you're already ahead of the game, you know it might happen. I was expecting that. It's not you want to be sick, but when it happens, you know, oh, this can happen to a human being. When the other famous teaching, when the cup is broken, you get the new cup, or the new car, or the new this, the new that. Good, fine, you've got that nice thing, but it's already broken. One day it will break down, it will wear out, it will get lost, it will get taken from you in some way or other, because nothing lasts. So contemplating impermanence helps us to deal with these changes, the desiring mind, the angry mind. They're not sure. If you keep seeing the uncertainty of your desires and your thoughts and your desires and attachments, it undermines craving's ability to make you suffer. It's just, oh, that's just craving, and you can let it go when you see that, the impermanence of things. But when we forget, then we go to why? Why me? Why has this happened? This shouldn't happen. Life is supposed to be better than this. It's not fair. When I was a kid, I had brother and sister. When things go wrong, you always go around the house going, it's not fair. That's what craving does to a human being. It reduces you to just a little person wandering around going, it's not fair, this shouldn't happen. It's an injustice. There used to be a little cartoon character we'd watch, and when things went wrong, they didn't get what they want, they go, it's an injustice, it's an injustice, it's not fair. That's what craving does to us. Next question, Dear Lumpur. In the sutta, it is mentioned that before a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, he has to be secluded from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states. Can a layperson attain samadhi, let alone the first jhana, when he is bombarded with his day-to-day worldly affairs? Yes, lay people do attain samadhi, but they have to understand with right view the way to do it, the method, and they have to learn to train their mind to see what are the obstacles and what are the problems and hindrances, and make adjustments in their life, in their mind, in the way they think, the effort they apply. There's many things we learn, and that's what you are learning when you follow the Buddhist path. So we're secluded from sensual pleasures. Well, we do things like keep the 8 precepts sometimes. If you want to attain jhana, I'd practice a lot with the 8 precepts. Reduce the distractions, the entertainments, the social functions, the dinner parties, the parties, the this, the that, the drinking, all the things that we associate with maybe having a good time, entertainments, fun, pleasure. Much of that can be discarded, but it takes a little bit of practice, renunciation, and seeing the value of it. But as you get more used to that, then your mind, your mental energy is more available for the development of mindfulness and states of samadhi. If you're still doing a lot of social activities in one way or another, well, you find it much more difficult to develop one-pointedness. Same with work, like if you have dedicated yourself to your job, whatever job it may be, that may be a good thing on one level, but your energy, your mental energy, your thoughts, your physical and mental energy is devoted mostly to that job, but you've got less and less to devote to the development of samadhi. maybe the rare person can do both together, but it's a rare person. Most people need to make some choices, how much time, energy, mental energy, how much importance they give to the job, and how much they save for their meditation practice and general well-being and development of the path in other areas as well. And that's not to neglect the job, but just to get the balance right. If you have a very capable mind, certainly somebody who already has a foundation in the practice of mindfulness and meditation, they may be able to take on more work and do more things. But in the beginning of your practice, you have to learn how to limit yourself a bit, and that's why the Buddha talked about seclusion, finding quiet places to practice. That could simply just be a quiet room in your house, away from the TV, the phone, other people, noise. And it may only be occasionally you get that, but you make the best of whatever you've got available. A quiet corner of a room, when you've got a bit of free time, a quiet space in the park or out in the countryside. You have to make all kinds of adjustments, and you might call them sacrifices if you really want to deepen your practice of samadhi. So it's possible, but you have to adjust your lifestyle to suit it and support that. Keeping the precepts, making time available. You look at the Buddha himself, he spent his life in the forest. He may have been in monasteries in the forest, but quite often he was even just moving around, camping, staying in the forest, hermitages. He was born in the forest, enlightened in the forest, died in the forest. So, that gives you a clue, doesn't it? Or we just chanted tonight the Anapanasati Sutta. The Buddha said, go to an empty dwelling, the foot of a tree, a quiet place. So sometimes you try and arrange that. So we go on retreats, don't we? We spend 10 days on a meditation retreat. That's a good thing to do when you can. But to do a meditation retreat, you obviously have to set aside other activities. You have to make that sacrifice. So people who do develop deep samadhi do it a lot. It becomes their priority, even if they have other duties and responsibilities in their life. And they go on retreat regularly, they meditate regularly, and they do the best they can with the situation they've got. You have to be realistic as well. If you've decided to have a family and you've got a couple of young kids, it may be a while before you start getting enough free time and quiet time to do a lot of meditation. You may have to practice other things when you've got young kids, a lot of metta and educate them and care for them. So your practice has to vary depending on your lifestyle and where you're at. But it can be done, especially as we get a little bit more experienced, older in life, more experienced, where you see what you need to do to support your meditation practice. Another question. I am still struggling with my sitting meditation after about 2 years of practicing. The mind does not want to stay still after 10 or 15 minutes. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the word understand is used for a meditator to know when his breath is long or short. Some teachers teach to label, for example, counting 1 on the inhalation, 2 on the exhalation, etc. The breaths, to label the breaths to stay concentrated. Can Luang Por please give some pointers and advice on this? Well, the sort of thing you're describing is very universal. It's a very rare person who gets peaceful quickly in their practice and finds it easy and can stay in states of samadhi for long periods of time from the beginning. For most people, it's a lifetime's work. It's a practice that you have to keep coming back to and developing over and over again. You have to be willing to be in it for the long haul, I'd say, looking at most people. There's a few people who get very quick success, maybe because they've done it in past lives, but they're very rare. The majority of us, it's a long-term, gradual training. So 2 years of practicing, I'd say, is not very long. You might feel it's a long time, but many of us have been practicing 30, 40, 50 years, and we're still learning. So it's a lifetime's work. And if you look at anyone who's attained enlightenment, it'll have been many lifetimes' work. So 2 years is tiny. Don't want to put you off. I'm just giving you a perspective here. You have to accept it can be a long-term commitment and a long-term training. But one thing to remember is you're looking for the enjoyment in this. When you practice mindfulness of breathing, for example, you'll start to experience some rapture, some enjoyment, maybe not every time, all the time, but from time to time. That's what keeps you going. You start to enjoy it. You learn how to relax more, calm the mind, let go of worries and stress and other mental hindrances. And from that, you often get a lot of insight and understanding about yourself, which also brings you happiness. So that's why we do it. So remind yourself of that from time to time, because you're putting effort in and you might doubt, why am I doing this? What's the point? Well, you're going to get some happiness, some joy, and some insight, and free up your mind from a lot of stress and suffering the more you practice. If your mind is not staying still after 10 or 15 minutes, again, that's very normal. You just have to keep practicing, keep bringing up the effort, keep putting attention back on the breath. And this is why the Buddha said, know the short breath, know the long breath. I breathe in short, I know. So you know the breath coming in, that pause, and then the breath going out. You're making the breath the center of your attention. That's where your mental energy, your awareness is gathering. Of course, the mind slips away, gets lost, but you bring it back and you learn to keep doing that. So you have to learn to keep picking yourself up, just like a kid learning to walk when they're a baby, or learning anything in life, any skill that requires repeated practice. You have to keep bringing up that energy, picking yourself up, coming back to the basics, but at the same time try and appreciate the goodness of what you're doing and find the enjoyment in it, because you can. And that's, what many people find is they're sitting there, their body is more or less relaxed, they can sit there for a while. For a period of time they're with the breath, but the breath is a very subtle feeling. It's very easy to say, I am with the breath, but at the same time you're thinking many other things. You're doing two things at once. You're partially with the breath, here and there you're aware of the breath, and then part of the time you're with your thoughts. And so you can spin stories and fantasies and imagine things and run over this and that problem and go here and go there. And you're sitting there and you're telling yourself, I'm doing mindfulness of breathing. But if you're honest and very, very aware and clear in your mind, you have to say, no, I'm really not. I'm with all the thoughts and I'm planning and scheming and liking and disliking. It's about a refinement of awareness, really learning to pay attention to the breath, really making the breath the center of your attention and getting to know the breath, sticking with the breath and doing that better. And that's where the practice is. We're all aware how we can do one activity, especially something you're used to, and maybe it's a repetitive activity or something you're just very used to, and you can think of many other things at the same time. You can drive a car, but your mind is not on the road all the time. You're planning what you're going to say to your boss at work or what you're going to do in the shops tomorrow, whatever. Our mind does this. We can be physically doing one thing, and the mind is well away, not mindful at all for periods of time. And breath meditation is exactly the same. So it's about developing that refinement and constancy of awareness directed to the breath. And that's where people find it frustrating, annoying, disappointing, and you just have to learn how to coach yourself as you do it. Talk to yourself skillfully, remind yourself what you're doing, why. Develop skillful means to let go of some of the hindrances. That all comes through the practice. Counting can help, because when you count, if you're honest, you can't deny if you've lost count, you've lost your awareness. So counting does help add that extra focus on the breath. So you're watching the breath and then you're counting 1 breath in, 1 breath out, 2 breath in, 2 breath out. And you set yourself a limit, so you say, I'll only count up till 5 or 10. I won't go beyond that. When I reach 10, I go back to 1, and my goal is just to have 10 in-breaths and out-breaths, to be able to count and be fully mindful of those 10 in-breaths and out-breaths without the mind wandering off. And you see, your mind is sneaky, so you get to 9 in-breaths, 9 out-breaths, fully mindful, aware of the breath, and you're about to get the 10th, but then you start thinking, and you say, well, I got to 9. Call it 10. Start again. And we like to do that, don't we? Or we lose our attention on number 3, and then we say, well, I was away for a couple of seconds, so I'll pick it up on 6. Don't do any of these funny games. Just keep going back to 1. When you've lost your awareness, be honest. Back to honesty as well. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest. Oh, no mindfulness today. Start again at 1. Even if you only get to 2 breaths in, 2 breaths out, and then you lose it, okay, just go back to 1. So this is the competition with yourself. You're not competing with anyone else. It's not something you have to boast about. I had hundreds and hundreds of mindful breaths today. Look at me, I'm so good. You don't have to boast, because it's self-explanatory, it's self-evident. If you're peaceful and mindful, people will notice that, because you won't be getting stressed and upset about things. So it's not something to show off about, talk about. It's just for your knowledge. You may use the counting to help you be more mindful of those in-breaths and out-breaths, and you just keep working at paying attention to the breath, using it as a meditation object, as an anchor. Of course, that's only one part of our practice. We also develop contemplation, we develop the precepts, awareness of our intentions, and so on. So there's different aspects of the practice, but central to the practice is the quality and the ability with mindfulness, and we just keep working at it. In daily life as well, with our actions, our speech, and when we have time to do formal meditation, sitting and walking meditation, can develop mindfulness very, very well. So I would try to set aside too many, don't have too many goals about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to attain this and achieve this within this time period. So you get people who come to a monastery and they say, I'm going to get enlightened within 3 months, finish it up, do the job, and then go on and do something else. Nobody gets enlightened after 3 months, certainly not in this day and age. You have to set aside some of those goals and just say, I'm just going to do it and see how we go. One good one is, I'm just going to do it, see how I go, but I'm not going to quit until I've done it. And however long it takes, I'll do it. If it takes 1 lifetime, fine. 10 lifetimes, fine. Because what else is there to do in life? What is the best for a human being? Realizing the 4 Noble Truths, freeing your mind from suffering, freeing your mind from greed, anger, delusion, the causes of suffering. That's the best for a human being. So why not devote your life to that? And it's not like other things will suffer. Your relations with your family, your friends, and the world will improve. If you're letting go of greed, anger, delusion, you're going to become a happier, more content, wiser person, and that will help you to deal with society and the problems of the world better. So I would recommend, start that way and just see how you go. And if it's going to take many years, well, just give up many years to it. What else is there to do? Go the other way and just become more stressed, more caught up in the world, more confused, more unhappy. Unfortunately, many people do go that way. But we have this opportunity to practice, and meditation and ways to develop mindfulness are really central to it. You might not spend all your time sitting, watching your breath, but if you're doing it a couple of times a day, so morning and evening regularly, you'll find that your general level of mindfulness improves slowly, quickly, well, that partly depends on how much effort you put in, but you will find over time things improve and you gain so much from that. But you have to try it for yourself. Can only give you the sales pitch, but you have to try it, don't you? So, those are the questions for today. We're going to take a break from the live streams for a couple of weeks other than the Saturday nights, because we have some other things to do, but we'll be back probably at the beginning of Vasa. So we'll see you then with the more regular live streams. So tomorrow night there won't be one. But as I said, it won't be for more than a few weeks that we take a break. So for the moment, we'll wish you well, and may the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha guide you, protect you.